Good afternoon, good morning, Mark. How are you doing? Long time no
Excellent.
see.
It is, Danny. It is. It's definitely a long time, as in only the world's really, I feel, in the last couple of months starting to allow us to travel again and see people in person. So it's I'm looking forward to doing that more, getting back into that rhythm.
Yeah. So you were, I think, traveling to the Microsoft conference, right?
Yeah, I went to MPPC a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
I'm going to Australia in 2 weeks. Be in Sydney.
yeah.
And I've already booked my tickets to Europe next year to do Dynamics
Ah,
Minds conference.
right.
So
Okay.
yeah, I'll be speaking there. I'm looking forward to that.
Ah, yeah, right. Ah, it's good that you booked already in advance because the prices, of course, the earlier you
Yeah,
book, the better, right?
yeah. I mean, that's right. I've actually booked my flights to MVP Summit. Just because
Yeah,
last year the start of this year got crazy, right? The announcement was late, so the
yeah,
price went through the roof. This way, paid for it out of my own pocket, but I know that I will be there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
At a good price.
Yeah, I will be there as well. I also almost straight away booked the tickets to Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
We stopping in Hawaii on the way, so my wife kind of got
Nice.
a free holiday pass
Excellent. Excellent.
with me. With me, we stopping to Hawaii a bit, and then we continue to Seattle, and then she'll be doing some traveling. I'll go to the MVP Summit.
Nice. Nice.
So I'll see you there in person. Cool.
Yeah.
Um, Look, I thought it might be funny because you always ask your guests about three introductionary questions. And
Correct.
I actually don't know the answer of those questions about you. You ask everyone else, but not about you, right? So it's about food, family, and fun. Would you like to sharing with us about these?
Yeah. Sure. Food, family, and fun. Well, let's start with family. I have got three
Yeah,
children. One is
yeah.
one is 18, Connor. He's just 2 weeks ago was his last day of school. So he's off to university next year, studying to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And the other little tidbit, he's just come back from world champions in hip hop dancing, and I came second
Ah,
worldwide. So he's an
right.
avid hip hop dancer. I have two other children. Then one is just about to turn three, Poppy, and my
Yeah.
boy Nico is about 1 year, 2 months old.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then
right.
my lovely wife. And yeah, so that's the family. We live in a very remote part of New Zealand, 40 minutes from our closest town. So I love looking out the front of my property. I look out over the Pacific Ocean and farmland. So it's
Yeah.
very nice. Not a lot of people, up close. So that's family. Food. I love barbecuing. My wife Meg, she's an avid cook, and so she's always experimenting and trying new things. If I was to distill down, if I was given the choice of only one food for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
it would be bacon. I love
Bacon.
bacon.
Okay.
I love crispy bacon. I just, yeah. And my kids are starting to inherit that taste for it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But I grow a lot of food. That was the other thing. I
Yeah.
garden. I do heaps of gardening. I've just put in 5 different chili types,
Wow.
with Carolina Reaper being my hottest chili that I've got growing. I've got them actually growing hydroponically this year, as well as I have them out in the traditional garden. So we try to produce as much food as we can from our own garden.
Yeah.
What do I do for fun? What do I do for fun? Well, kids mainly is where my attention is. Every now and again, I will do some gaming. But when I say every now and again, we're talking about once every 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
So
Right.
do I get into some online gaming? Otherwise, my time is taken up with exploring kind of technology and how it applies to living. So, I think I've got over 200 devices in my property that are all internet aware. So
Yeah.
IoT, everything
Yeah.
runs on voice control. Everything is automated that can be automated. My latest investment is robotic mower that
Yeah.
mows
Right.
my 2.5 acre and a half of property, so about 5,000 square meters, close to 6,000, all been mown by a robotic mower. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, wow, a lot of things going on. So I guess also with your land and growing everything, that takes a bit of your time too.
I love it.
I guess.
I love it. Yeah, gets me outside, keeps me out in the sun, and always experimenting, right? Because I think that in a way, I was brought up to believe that gardening was easy, and the more I do it, the more complex it is. You're always, battling the wind, doing damage to your plants. And if it's not the wind, it's some type of creepy crawly is eating it, snails, slugs, that type of thing. So it's a constant battle to get the balance right and grow your own food.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. Fun facts, effectively. So thank you for sharing that with us. 12 years in the MVP program, Mark. So I was looking up your profile. I remember, I think when I was starting to, being interested by the whole dynamics and the MVP program, you were already there. I was following you and your podcast and everything. So I'm very glad and honored basically to have you on the show. Right? I was a few times on your, right? So thank you for making the time. 12 years in the MVP program. How does that feel?
It feels short in a way and long in another way. I often find it's interesting to, you see so many new people come in and not just into the MVP program, but into the community and even into Microsoft, and they don't have that legacy of, where did we come from? And I just find it, 20 years ago, I started in 2003 with Dynamics. No, sorry, it wasn't even called Dynamics. It was called MSCRM 1.2. And in that same year, Microsoft released version 1. Before the end of the year, they released version 1.2. And that's where I started. That was the product I started on. In our market, Salesforce wasn't even heard of, didn't exist. I was on other CRM systems prior to that, but not for my career. They were just, I worked in companies where, I was involved in using them. My original one was a Fox Pro database, which was very old, right? And that was our CRM system, all keyboard driven. No concept of email, even, with that application back then, because email wasn't the thing like it is today. Everything was done by phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Lots of changes over the years. So I was reading this morning a post on LinkedIn about the 90-day mentoring challenge. So I was very glad to see that you were back doing it again. I did it in 2019, I think, or 2020, somewhere there. I really enjoyed it. I think it was a six cohorts program at that time where you joined a live meeting, very entertaining, very everyone on the call chatting and so on. I really enjoyed it. And then those assignments, I remember those assignments where you ask people to record themselves.
Yes.
And introduce themselves, right? Which pushing effectively people a bit outside of their comfort zone, right? It really helped me tremendously. So I'm really glad you doing it again. Are doing it again for the community. Do you want to share any changes? What are your plans?
Yeah, so I did it for 5 years. I started when I was in the UK, and I wanted a program. I wanted to do a mentoring program that people could do it from anywhere in the world. I felt that any mentoring you could get, you had to be geographically close to the mentee, and what, other people were doing. And I was like, what about those people in countries that they don't already have somebody that could help them and help them on their journey? And so I always determined that it would be an online, and this was pre-pandemic, right, is when I started.
Yeah.
I've had 700 odd people be involved in the program. Of those, over 40 of them are MVPs now. Over between 5 and 10 have become Microsoft FTEs, so, working on Microsoft, and multiple have started their own companies, which was always my goal, that it wasn't just one thing. It was, there are so many avenues that each person can take. And I find that a lot of people are stuck in their careers, in business applications, and they don't know. I remember this guy from Fender Guitars in the US. He was on the first time I ran it, and, he had just heard it via word of mouth, and he was a CRM admin, and he thought that was all you could do in Dynamics. And of course, I light up, all the different industry roles and what they look like and what you could do and who you could work for. And, now he's a consultant at one of the largest consulting companies in the world. It totally changed his life. His wife got into the industry, and it's stories like that really have motivated me to come again and take a fresh look at it. It's going to have around 12 modules this time rather than 6. There's a lot of new content, with AI coming to market. That's got to be a component in how you think now going forward, because it permeates every part of our life. So, a lot of updates. It's going to be a lot more time zone friendly, really designed for, I'd like to see more people from more diverse countries, right? Because I just see that if you can plant a seed in a market, I had people in the early days in Nigeria come along to the training, and now I and it's not just because of me, but Nigeria has exploded as a country in the biz apps community with Microsoft, and I think, there's so many other countries that are not represented yet and I suppose, Argentina being one of those, or South America. I want to see a lot more work in Africa. I just think, I'd like the message to get out further, because at the end of the day, I've seen people, when they've taken a career in the space and really dedicated themselves to it, they've made more money. That supports greater family members, community. And we have an amazing community, and this is what I really get to tap into. The content I share is part of it, but the community of the people involved in that particular cohort that we go through, they make lifelong friends, and it opens up opportunities, and it really allows them individually to grow with their peers that are at a similar pace.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I was, as I said, right, I was one of the 40 MVPs I get that you had on the show, right? And yeah, absolutely. It's having someone that lights up, as you said, different perspective, right? Like opens up all the other perspective that you don't know what you don't know. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
If you hear from someone something, you might investigate that part and look, but if you don't know about any other roles that you had, any other platform, any other technology landscape and everything that you're presenting, then basically, it's definitely opening up a lot of different paths, career paths, and also changing lives really, because as you said, right, like it's not only money, but it's sometimes just being able to sell yourself or do something that you actually love doing, instead of kind of being stuck in a role that doesn't really fit you, right? You then know that there are other opportunities where you can be happier and maybe have a bit more time for yourself and so on. So yeah, amazing. Great to see you back doing the mentoring challenge. And you were saying, so a bit more AI content as well. So I know that you are, I've seen you posting about AI before the whole GPT boom and everything, right? I know you were posting about books and everything. So tell me a bit more about where did that came from? Like, when did you start really looking into AI, and what was the reasoning behind, like before anyone else, basically?
I would say it was definitely while I was in London. I in part of developing myself, I set myself a challenge to learn 5 new topics. Or talk about 5 topics, right? And because I'm a big believer, if you really want to learn and educate yourself on something, the best way is to teach it, right? Because you've got to get good, because otherwise people call you out, right? When you don't know your stuff. So AI was one of my things back in 2017, 18 that I started to index on. And the reason is I had spent a bit of time in the Google offices in London because my wife worked at Google, and I saw what they were doing with DeepMind there. And then I really saw Microsoft's lens on this right back then, was around how do we enable this concept of practical AI. You know, it's one thing to have AI that can beat a chess champion or be an expert at Go, and that's awesome, right? But I'm not in life. You know, chess is not my baby. Learning Go is not my baby. That's not practical to me. That's kind of like a metric of intelligence. Yes, I understand that. And so what I saw Microsoft doing back then, you know, with, you know, what it was doing in the machine learning space, what it was doing in, you know, particularly with Azure, was really what they were terming, and, you know, I adopted, was this concept of practical AI. How can I use AI that enhances what I do each day and makes me smarter and better? And even part of my frustration at that time, I started using Google Home and Alexa extensively.
Yep.
And I was frustrated because I thought these things, you know, were meant to be intelligent, but they were really glorified audio search engines, right? And like, I won't say the name of the device I have on my desk because she'll light up, but the thing is, I have routines, right, set up, and I can ask, I always have the same trigger phrase to start a routine. And I've had that for 5 years, but I will find at least 2 or 3 times a week that she will do something totally different. Like she will think that the phrase that I've given is I'm searching. So I'll tell you what the phrase it is: Studio Go. Studio Go means when I walk in here, all my lights come on, the color scheme gets set to the right level, all my screens come on, my soundboard, the air conditioning even comes on, right? It's set to how the amount of times that she'll go, the local studios in your area you know, massage works, 2, you know, and I'm like, I have said the same phrase for 5 years, multiple times a day, yet you still haven't picked up my nuances or anything around that. It's still like it's a brand new, fresh statement every time. No uniqueness to it, no, and so, yeah, I was frustrated with where I suppose my expectations of AI to be is way further ahead than what where it is. You know, I dream of a world where I've been storing everything digital about me, every receipt, etc., for over 10 years now, in the hope that one day I'm going to feed that into an AI model that's designed for me, and it's going to understand me and probably help me in my nuanced way that I operate, right? I mean, I'm dyslexic. I'm slightly neurodiverse. And so I don't know if there's if you can say that slightly, but and it's kind of like, what are those patterns that if I had changed because of a greater body of research, I might be able to enjoy a better life? And I just think that AI really does that for us, and we're only at the infancy, even though, you know, it's been around since the 60s in some form and shape. We're really still at the infancy, and I believe that we're, you know, right now with particularly large language models, we've got this baby, and this baby's going to grow up really quickly in the next 5 years, and we're going to get blown away about where it'll be in 5 years from now. You know, and so when I see people detracting and, it's not an expert, I'm like, give it time. You know, my kid didn't work in their first month. They walked, though, after a year, and they've never looked back. And so, yeah, I think it's exciting times around using AI to really enhance what you do. And I like the term co-pilot that Microsoft's brought about, you know, about being alongside and being in that co-pilot space. But I do see that co-pilot will become autopilot in the future as well, right? There'll be a lot of, why would you need to clarify that with me when you know my pattern, know my behavior, know my response? I would expect it just to operate under that assumption.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so basically, so it's exactly why I wanted to have a chat, because of your understanding and your kind of deep expertise in AI, especially in our community, right? So I'm starting to explore usage of AI in mostly helping me in understanding requirements from clients. So I have a deep interest into deep understanding of client requirements, making sure that we understand each other, making sure that requirements are well understood by my dev team when they have to pick up the work, that there is kind of that shared understanding. And when we deliver the final product, that there is kind of no miss expectations and so forth. So I'm kind of exploring a bit, playing with AI tools basically in this topic. So I wanted to get your feel on, first, if we talk about shared understanding of requirements and requirements elaboration, requirements validation, right? Do you see in your role and basically from your career, what are the big challenges that you see, and how can AI basically, in theory, how could AI help us in those topics?
Yeah, so the number one, the first thing that pops to mind, or that's the number one, first thing that pops to mind is that when you're going onto a project in an industry that you might not have been working in the last 6 to 12 months, you might have worked it in the past, or you've never worked within it, AI is a great way to get up to speed on the challenges holistically of that industry, right? To be able to prompt it and say, let's say you're going into a manufacturing sector and, in the context of 2023, what have been the biggest challenge? You could say in the last 5 years, what have been the biggest challenges in manufacturing, might be discrete manufacturing, that, I should be aware of. And so therefore it outlines that framework. And then, I always like to drill, is there anything else? And then once you've got that, then drill into those, like, let's go deeper. And then, if your AI, whatever tool you're using is internet aware, being able to find the resources to go deeper on any of those. And the other thing I've used it specifically with is with the customer, is being able to feed whatever public documentation that's available into an AI tool that tells me specifically for this organization, what are their challenges? In the annual report, did they highlight anything? Are there concerns? If we looked at the LinkedIn profiles of the key exec layer in the organization, have they made any public statements that we need to, reference and bring in? So I find, in our industry, it's a massive research tool. And it really allows me to understand. And then the other thing I really like it for is that, let's say I've got the outline of what I think everything I should be covering, is then to hand that to AI and go, what am I not seeing?
Yeah.
What have I missed? And it's in that, I mean, listen, here's a practical example. I was just having my, rewriting my will, and my lawyer had written the will, right? And so it had been written about 5 years ago, and I took that entire will and I submitted it to AI, and I said, based on New Zealand law, the governing country I'm in, are there any errors that you see in this? And straight away it spat out 5 different things that were wrong and incorrect, and was able to reference the legal documentation. And then I asked another question, what was missing? And it came up with a whole range of things that should have been sections of the will, that should have been included, that should have been thought through on my part, as the will being on my behalf. And it really dawned on me that something like a legal document like this is only as good as your lawyer's knowledge.
Yeah.
And your lawyer is only as good as the work that they've been working on, right? And I just thought, wow, here was a massive opportunity, like my will that I have written with the help of AI, and yes, it's based on the original will, I feel is much more sound, robust, less open to interpretation, which is what you want on a will. You wanted that, the final will and testament to be, interpretable correctly in my wishes, right? And I feel like I've got that now, and that's once again a real practical use of going, handing AI a document, a schema, a something, and say, where are the gaps? What am I not thinking about? And I find that very, very helpful, rather than just creating something from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had similar use cases where it's great to hear you kind of validating a bit my thinking of where I could take this to. Us having a situation where indeed I was a bit unknown about the industry, and the stakeholder with whom I had a conversation explaining me his challenges, somehow we couldn't understand each other properly.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean, he was, look, I've been in the industry for 15 years and working with stakeholders and so forth. And I work with great kind of product owner and so forth. This person was struggling to kind of explain in simple terms what were their challenges and what they do on a day-to-day basis, and kind of deviating from the topic and going into another topic before even finishing their sentence. So basically I was a bit lost before my first workshop. And as you said, I kind of research for that industry, what are the typical processes. I almost ask AI to impersonate that person. Yes. I said, you are such role, working in this industry. And that person actually highlighted the big challenges that they had. So I put, the industry is having those kind of challenges. What are your day-to-day activities? And what would you use a tool like a CRM tool? What would you use it for? And kind of the AI tool started prompting, oh, you first do this task, and then you have to record this, and then you have to generate those reports. And then the next step, you have to do those activities. I won't name exactly the activities, yes, because as we know, it's but effectively, I could very quickly understand from AI, I could translate based on the information I got from the person, and AI could complement that information with knowledge they have from the industry, from the type of roles, and from the type of activity that that person is doing, could complement my knowledge. And then effectively I was able to prepare even a demo for the workshop. So I prepared a demo, halfway understanding what that person told me, and then running the demo and validating with them. So validating the concept he said, but yes, also prompting, because AI kind of generated other tasks and other challenges that that person didn't even mention. So I kind of prompt the person. I ask, what about this? Do you have that issue? Or what about this type of activity? Yeah. And so somewhere where, you know, the person confirmed that they actually not do it because they have another system for that, or because it's done by another person and so forth. But in some cases, they found it very useful. So, definitely a very good use cases in, you know, preparing your workshop, preparing the questions I want to run with my stakeholders and so forth. So this I found very, very, very valuable. And would you have any tips on how do you formulate your prompts? Do you have any specific tips that you would share with us?
Yeah. So, I mean, I use GTP4 as my main tool. I use Bard as secondary tool, and then Bing as my third. As my third tool. And with GPT-4, now I'm on the paid version, it has introduced this ability for you to basically share a bunch of information about yourself and the tone that you want it to respond in. So I have this one line that says, whenever I prompt you, at the end of it, before you answer, you should come back one question at a time and ask me any clarifying questions. Yeah. And I found that brilliant, because rather than just spit out what it's, you know, the next, following word in the sentence structure might be, it actually asks me clarifying questions, and it does it by default now every time. And so I found that extremely effective. It knows who I am. It knows my website assets. It knows who I work for. It knows it has all that it knows my job role. And so therefore, when I ask a question, even where I live, it has the grounding or the context of my place, of the context I'll be asking in. And then, of course, it asks those clarifying questions. So I found that very, very effective in how I get frustrated sometimes, I suppose, with the amount of people that say they've created the ultimate prompt. I think it's like going, it's like I've invented the one sentence that you can use every time as a human. It's not the case, right? Everything's evolving. Everything's going to continue to change. And so, I just find the more I use it, the more nuanced, the more, I did one lot of just getting used to creating images using prompts. Yeah. And that's not as easy as you think, right? I created 22 odd images once and published them all on X and Instagram for a while. And it's only through application that you get better, right? You get nuanced in how to describe something to kind of get the outcome. It's not just by, it's not something you can just wake up and be good at, I feel. I think it's something that you need to practice. And I believe that we live in a world where AI is going to be, enhance every part of our lives. And so therefore I want to make sure that I'm in lockstep learning as the technology evolves, so I get better and better and better. I don't think it's something that you can go, you know what, I'm going to pick that up in 2 years' time once it's matured. I think you'll be behind. Like, yes, there's always going to be people joining the game at latter points, but I want to be on it now.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're using those three different tools. Are you comparing them sometimes? Are you writing kind of similar prompts to the three and seeing a bit their responses, or?
Only at the start, and this is really when I was validating Bard skills. Yeah. I did at the start. I mean, I use Midjourney I pay for Midjourney as my image tool. And yeah, I did at the start. I don't tend to compare them now. Only if I got a real answer that I wasn't happy with, would I probably then go and try another way. But then I'd probably also use some plugins to make sure I was acquiring the right data sets, etc., to get to drive to the outcome. Yeah.
And anything related to privacy. So you were saying anything public you're happy to share, but sometimes, so basically, and I want to validate that thinking with you, right? What I am prompting or asking, I almost think to myself, if I would ask that question, would I be comfortable asking in public and putting that question, for example, on my website? Would that be, and that's kind of the test I'm using in my head, is that the information, even through asking, not going to divulge any privacy information? Because even when asking, you might kind of divulge some information if you are very precise, right? So that is because we never know, right? I'm paying for ChatGPT as well. I have the paid subscription. It knows my name. I am always kind of thinking in the back of my head, what if it records everything? Everything is anyway, stored somewhere. It links to my name. So basically, maybe in 10 years time, whatever, they can always trade that information back. So I'm always very careful. Is that being too careful, you think? Or is that the right mindset to have? How do you deal with that?
It's interesting, is it, in that my wife and I in 2017, our first stop when we started to go traveling was Beijing, China. So we went there in 2017 and we met up with a guide that took us 100 kilometers outside of Beijing to the Great Wall of China. And so he's driving us there for a private tour of a very remote part of the Great Wall of China. And of course, me being me, I start to ask questions of the driver, and they're controversial questions. Tell me about Tiananmen Square. Were you around then? What really went down? And he said something very interesting. He said, what you don't understand in the West is that you have this concept of privacy where every person in China knows there's no such thing as privacy. There's an assumed no privacy. And so you are different when you assume that there is no privacy. You act differently. I think in the West, we're under the assumption that we have privacy.
Yeah.
And so that we act a certain way because we think we have privacy. And listen, the minute your device is internet aware, you are giving away truckloads of data about you. So for me, I'm like, I don't care. In that, if someone tried to do digital twin me and take my persona, I have put so much online that it would be very easy for anybody to validate whether somebody was trying to do something that would be out of character for me to do. I mean, you think I'm about to publish my 500th episode on my podcast. How many hours is my voice print now in the public domain? It will be able to train people could make me say anything they wanted based on the current state of AI technology. There's hours of my video, my face, so therefore they can make my mouth, my expressions, all that's going to just get better and better and better.
Yeah.
And listen, I think we're going to get to the point where people will not be able to detect the fake. You will need, just like you have antivirus software in the past, you will need anti-fake software in the future to be able to test whether, is this really Dani in front of me right now, or is it an avatar that's been programmed to, fish for information, as an example.
Yeah.
And so I don't care, and I'll tell you how much I don't care. There's a new AI startup that has been funded by a bunch of billionaires, and they had this AI that just chats to you conversationally, and it'll ask you questions. And I told it all my financial data, how I wanted to be financially independent, and I ascribe what that means for me. That means I don't trade time for money. I shared all sorts of things, right, about my experiences and stuff. And I reached the limit of that AI's capability. I knew I tapped it out, and I gave it tons of private information. But there's an element, people listen to this and go, I'm stupid, but I actually don't care. I believe I'm savvy enough to detect when, someone's trying to trick me, per se, and I've got a lot of technology around me that's always looking for that. But I'm not really worried or concerned about how much I share of me. My wife always gets me to tone it down about how much I share of our children. And that's fair, because they've got their own life and their own identity, and anything that goes online really is permanent, and will be even more so in the future. So I'm not too worried. I'm not even too worried about AI using my stuff to train itself. I'm quite happy for it to do that.
Yeah. And what about some information you might have about when you're working with clients, or some private information that basically, a concrete example, right? A client shares that they want to implement a specific system. They share the challenges with us, and it's not really public. They share it only with us, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't share that with AI directly, simply because that's my test. My litmus test is, would I put that publicly on my website? And the answer is no. So I would basically ask AI question about the industry, similar industry, maybe country, kind of similar challenges, kind of asking question, but not mentioning any specific names and so forth. Do you think we need to be careful still with those kind of, with sharing this kind of information, or because everything is online, everything is recorded, that AI will anyway have access to this kind of information via any other source? Is it being too careful, you think, or?
No, as in from a confidentiality person, a client trust relationship, I definitely wouldn't share any of that type of information at all, because that's a legal agreement that we have with most of our clients in that situation, that we wouldn't do that. So there's no way that I would use client data. And all the examples I give you is my personal data. I find that is okay with client data. Absolutely not. And even it goes beyond that. It's not even, let's say it wasn't, a public system. What about if it was a private system that I was inputting the data to? Even that would be a breach, right? I can't take customer data and put it into another system and their knowledge, their IP, their unique way of doing things. Yeah. That's theirs. So the only scenario I could see that working on is, let's say I was working with a financial institution and they had issued me a laptop and a credentials to their network, would be to run it on their internal network. And so whatever tooling they had in place, so it stays in the bounds of their firewalled environment, or, inside of their systems. And so I'd only operate within the bounds of their own systems in that scenario.
Yeah. And I think I was starting to play with Bing Chat Enterprise in that space. I don't know if you tried it. I was just testing it out, but that's where I'm thinking to give more testing and because you are within the realm of the company, you can share more information which are within the company anyway. And if I understand correctly as well, being chat enterprise doesn't store, although I'm not sure how that real that is, but doesn't store any history.
Right.
Your history is not stored and it's not used to enhance the model. It's not shared back with the model at the end of the conversation.
Correct.
So that's where I was thinking to, if I really need to go and poke the AI a bit more about some very specific information, I would use that. Have you played with this tool? Have you played with?
So I've played with OpenAI on Azure, right? Which is as in where you decide for the Azure tenant you're operating within what data sets that you will provide it and train it on, etc. And of course, the beauty of that, yes, it doesn't update the LLM behind the scenes because that's the LLM's been deployed into your environment. And of course, there's many now. It's not just OpenAI, but Meta has been made available. I forget what the name of theirs is that Microsoft have also entered into a relationship with. And so I see that, if companies really want to get up to speed and where they need to be, I think their biggest challenge is not, training people on how to use AI. Their biggest challenge is going to be, what does your data estate look like and how usable is it? And I use this analogy of a supermarket, right? If you go into your local supermarket, if you've been there many times, you know where the veggie section is, you know where the meat section is, you know where the toiletry section is, right? And yet, in a lot of organizations, if we looked at this concept of data, they got a bit of data here, a bit of data over there, another department's got data somewhere else. And you go and you don't even know. There's no labeling. There's no, like in this aisle, there's cereal, breads, and milk product. You don't see any. There's no labeling or categorization. And I think in a lot of organizations, this is the state of their data estate, and they think that let's get AI because that's going to solve everything for us. And I'm just like, man, the thing you got to solve first is get your data estate right. Get it. Or even aware, right? And this is why I'm a big proponent of moving away from things like, data sets sitting in Excel or Access databases, and why low code is so important and the Power Platform is so important, because it prepares an organization to take these kind of siloed micro data sets that are all part of their data estate and brings it into a searchable, indexable, catalogable system that then makes it possible to run AI across ultimately and really get intelligent answers from that information. But as long as organizations are going to keep their data siloed, even not shared with the right roles and security inside an organization, I'm saying all should be shared. I don't want people jumping into the database that holds payroll data and find out how much annual leave I have or what salary I'm on. No, that shouldn't. I'm not saying make it available to everybody, but I'm saying within the governance bounds and rules, if data exists, it should be accessible. You should be able to get into it and somehow, gain access to it if you're allowed to gain access to it.
Yeah.
But most organizations are not in that scenario. Data is still sitting in SANs on the network and file shares in OneDrive or any other kind of cloud storage product. They've got 4 or 5 different SaaS solutions that all have segments of their data set not talking together. And so, I know it's a long-winded way around your question around search, and I think that an AI inside the organization, but I think that if a lot of organizations applied it today, they wouldn't necessarily get great results because their data is not great, not accessible.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, definitely. Some organizations definitely have, are in different maturity stages. Maybe to wrap up, looking a little bit at the future, right? So where we are today and where we'll be in the next few years, especially if you talk about AI tools to kind of help us in those research, kind of clarification, making yourself better at what you do, especially in this realm of requirements gathering, requirements validation, and so forth. I'm foreseeing, and maybe you can kind of enlighten me and validate what I'm thinking. I'm foreseeing maybe really AI working next to as an extra team member. Mm-hmm. So let's imagine an agile team. You would have your developer, your solution architect, and then you have kind of the AI copilot member maybe joining some of the workshops. Summarize. This is my dream would be summarizing maybe some of the meetings and creating for us well understood epics, features, user stories, like taking all this burden away from us, from the team, helping us with solution ideas, guiding us in the process as well. Like if the AI tool or if the AI member can help us in all the stand-ups we have and, the reviews, the sprint planning, maybe advise us based on the thousand of experiences that tool had from learning from basically everyone else, helping us in the process. What are the mistakes we're making and the correction on how to guide the project in a better space. This is my kind of wish list. What's your thought? Do you have any other vision or?
I think that's our human biological projection onto an intelligent entity. And I think that what will happen is at the speed that AI, and I think it'll continue to accelerate, similar to we saw the acceleration with Moore's law, is that I think that AI will say, listen, what's this agile thing that you're doing? Like, are you serious? That's archaic. You should have evolved the way you think about projects by this point. I think AI is going to be much more around, and I'm thinking about globally. When they look at the way the world's governed, it'll go, oh my gosh, this is such a flawed model. Here's a better model. And I think that's what will happen. And the more superior intelligent being will ultimately rule over the less superior intelligent being. And we might find ourselves being the lesser intelligent being. And so I think that when we question, we question AI now from our reference point, but I think AI might get to the point that'll say, that's not the question. You're asking the wrong question. Let me tell you what the question should be. And that's why, prompt engineering is an interesting thing that I think is going to have a very short life, because I think that AI will get to the point that it'll question us, and it'll weigh our answers and then make recommendations based on its knowledge and our feedback and our biases. It'll get really good at detecting human bias, I feel, and in all its nuanced forms. It'll get really good at detecting politics. Yeah. Right? How many projects have failed due to internal politics on that team? People having their own agendas, people trying to make a name for themselves, they're building reputation, they have a relationship problem with somebody else or an adversarial type relationship. And so therefore it plays out in the tech that you're doing. And I think that perhaps AI will start to get smart enough to detect that and probably guide us around what are better questions to be asking. Like, is waterfall, is Scrum, is any iteration of project methodology, is it time that it moved on? Is it time that it evolved? Is it a time that we do something around how we run projects because, some guru said this is the way to do it, and the guru became the guru god that nobody then questioned anymore or moved forward or challenged or changed or evolved. I think we're in a constant state of evolution, and we need to keep ourselves open to that evolution rather than becoming religious zealots of the way we currently do things. And I'm applying this all in a business context. Just because we've done something a way doesn't mean it's the best way to continue, because the way it was always done was with the tools and thinking and understanding of the world at that time. And, you know, how much in the last 5 years has the world massively, massively changed at a scale that, you know, much greater than perhaps the rest of my life in a way. We've experienced things that, you know, wasn't on our radar for so much of our life. And the world's changed, you know, with the pandemic, the wars that we're seeing up close now, the way governments are running, etc. I just think that, yeah, AI might be the savior of the world, but it might have to deal some blows to humanity to be the savior. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mark. That was very enlightening. Thank you again for sharing your knowledge with me and the community as well. And yeah, I wish you all the best with your, you know, endeavors and the mentoring challenge as well. And
Excellent.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Dani.
And we keep in touch.